Bangladesh. Officially, the People's Republic of Bangladesh is a country in South Asia. It is the eighth most populous country in the world and is among the most densely populated countries, with a population of nearly 170 million in an area of 148,460 square kilometers. Bangladesh shares land borders with India to the north, west, and east, and Myanmar to the southeast. To the south, it has a coastline along the Bay of Bengal. It is narrowly separated from Bhutan and Nepal by the Siliguri corridor, and from China by the mountainous Indian state of Sikkim in the north. Dhaka, the capital and largest city, is the nation's political, financial, and cultural center. Chittagong is the second largest city and is the busiest port on the Bay of Bengal. The official language of Bangladesh is Bengali, while Bangladeshi English is also used in the government and official documents alongside Bengali. Bangladesh forms the sovereign part of the historic and ethno-linguistic region of Bengal, which was divided during the partition of India in 1947 as part of a Muslim union with Pakistan, which it separated from in a bloody independence war in 1971. The country has a Bengali Muslim majority. Ancient Bengal was known as Gangaradeh and was a bastion of pre-Islamic kingdoms. Muslim conquests after 1204 heralded the Sultanate and Mughal periods, during which an independent Bengal Sultanate and a wealthy Mughal Bengal transformed the region into an important center of regional affairs, trade, and diplomacy. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, the maximum extent of British Bengal stretched from the Khyber Pass in the west to Singapore in the east. The creation of Eastern Bengal and Assam in 1905 set a precedent for the emergence of Bangladesh. The All India Muslim League was founded in Dhaka in 1906. In 1940, the first Prime Minister of Bengal, A.K. Fazlul Huq, supported the Lahore Resolution. Before the partition of Bengal, a Bengali sovereign state was first proposed by Premier H.S. Surawardi. A referendum and the announcement of the Radcliffe Line established the present-day territorial boundary. In 1947, East Bengal became the most populous province in the Dominion of Pakistan. It was renamed East Pakistan, and Dhaka became the country's legislative capital. The Bengali language movement in 1952, the East Bengali legislative election, 1954, the 1958 Pakistani coup d'état, the Six-Point Movement of 1966, and the 1970 Pakistani general election resulted in the rise of Bengali nationalism and pro-democracy movements. The refusal of the Pakistani military junta to transfer power to the Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, led to the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971. The Mukti Bahini, aided by India, waged a successful armed revolution. The conflict saw the Bangladeshi genocide and the massacre of pro-independence Bengali civilians, primarily targeting intellectuals and Hinduism. The new state of Bangladesh became the first constitutionally secular state in South Asia in 1972, with a large Hindu minority. Islam was declared the state religion in 1988. In 2010, the Bangladesh Supreme Court reaffirmed secular principles in the constitution. A middle power in the Indo-Pacific, Bangladesh is home to the sixth most spoken language in the world, the third largest Muslim majority population in the world, and the second largest economy in South Asia. It maintains the third largest military in the region and is the largest contributor of personnel to UN peacekeeping operations. Bangladesh is a unitary parliamentary republic based on the Westminster system. Bengalis make up almost 99% of the total population. The country consists of 8 divisions, 64 districts, and 495 sub-districts, as well as the world's largest mangrove forest. It hosts one of the largest refugee populations in the world due to the Rohingya genocide. Bangladesh faces many challenges, particularly corruption, political instability, overpopulation and effects of climate change. Bangladesh has been a leader within the Climate Vulnerable Forum. It hosts the headquarters of BIMSTEC. It is a founding member of the SAARC, as well as a member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Commonwealth of Nations. History. Ancient Bengal. Stone Age tools have been found in different parts of Bangladesh. Remnants of Copper Age settlements date back 4,000 years. Ancient Bengal was settled by Austroasiatics, Tibeto-Burmans, Dravidians, and Indo-Aryans in consecutive waves of migration. Archaeological evidence confirms that by the 2nd millennium BCE, rice-cultivating communities inhabited the region. By the 11th century, people lived in systemically aligned housing, buried their dead, and manufactured copper ornaments and black and red pottery. The Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers were natural arteries for communication and transportation, and estuaries on the Bay of Bengal permitted maritime trade. The early Iron Age saw the development of metal weaponry, coinage, agriculture, and irrigation. Major urban settlements formed during the late Iron Age, in the mid-1st millennium BCE, when the northern black polished ware culture developed. In 1879, Alexander Cunningham identified Mahasthanjar as the capital of the Pundra kingdom mentioned in the Rigveda. The oldest inscription in Bangladesh was found in Mahasthanjar and dates from the 3rd century BCE, written in the Brahmi script. Greek and Roman records of the ancient Gangaridae kingdom, which deterred the invasion of Alexander the Great, are linked to the fort city in Wari Bateshwar. The site is also identified with the prosperous trading center of Swanaguro listed on Ptolemy's world map. Roman geographers noted a large seaport in southeastern Bengal, corresponding to the present-day Chittagong region. Ancient Buddhist and Hindu states which ruled Bangladesh included the Vanga, Samatata, and Pundra kingdoms, the Mauryan and Gupta empires, the Varman dynasty, Shashanka's kingdom, the Kajya and Kandra dynasties, the Pala Empire, the Sena dynasty, the Harikila kingdom and the Deva dynasty. These states had well-developed currencies, banking, shipping, architecture, and art, and the ancient universities of Bikrampur and Mainamati hosted scholars from other parts of Asia. Gopala I was the first ever elected ruler of the region in 750 AD, he went on to form the Pala dynasty that ruled until 1161 AD, during which time Bengal prospered. Xianzang of China was a noted scholar who resided at the Somapura Mahavihara, and Adisa traveled from Bengal to Tibet to preach Buddhism. The earliest form of the Bengali language emerged during the 8th century. Seafarers in the Bay of Bengal sailed and traded with Southeast Asia and exported Buddhist and Hindu cultures to the region since the early Christian era. Mughal period. The Mughal Empire controlled Bengal by the 17th century. Musa Khan of Bengal, the last independent ruler of Sonargaon after resisting Mughal conquest for several years, on July 10, 1610 was defeated and dethroned by Islam Khan Kishti, the army general of Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Islam Khan Kishti became the first Mughal Subadar of Bengal. After his defeat, Musa Khan became loyal to the Mughal Empire. He actively participated in the conquest of Tripura and the suppression of revolt in Kamrup. The Mughals established Dhaka as a fort city and commercial metropolis. It was the capital of Bengal Subagh for 75 years. In 1666, the Mughals expelled the Arakkans from the port of Chittagong. Mughal Bengal attracted foreign traders for its muslin and silk goods, and the Armenians were a notable merchant community. A Portuguese settlement in Chittagong flourished in the southeast, and a Dutch settlement in Rajshahi existed in the north. Bengal accounted for 40% of overall Dutch imports from Asia, including more than 50% of textiles and around 80% of raw silk. The Bengal Subah, described as the paradise of the nations, was a major global exporter, a notable center of worldwide industries such as muslin, cotton textiles, silk, and shipbuilding. Its citizens enjoyed one of the world's best living standards. During the 18th century, the Nawabs of Bengal became the region's de facto rulers, with the realm encompassing much of eastern South Asia. The Nawabs forged alliances with European colonial companies, making the region relatively prosperous early in the century. Bengal accounted for 50% of the gross domestic product of the empire. The Bengali economy relied on textile manufacturing, shipbuilding, saltpetre production, craftsmanship, and agricultural produce. Bengal was a major hub for international trade, renowned for its silk and cotton textiles worldwide. Bengal was also famed as a shipbuilding hub. Eastern Bengal was a thriving melting pot with strong trade and cultural networks. It was a relatively prosperous part of the subcontinent and the center of the Muslim population in the eastern subcontinent. The Bengali Muslim population was a product of religious evolution, and their pre-Islamic beliefs included elements of Buddhism and Hinduism. The construction of mosques, Islamic academies, and Sufi monasteries facilitated conversion, and Islamic cosmology played a significant role in developing Bengali society. Scholars have theorized that Bengalis were attracted to Islam by its egalitarian social order, which contrasted with the Hindu caste system. By the 15th century, Muslim poets were widely writing in the Bengali language. Syncretic cults, such as the Baul movement, emerged on the fringes of Bengali Muslim society. The Persianate culture was significant in Bengal, where cities like Sonargaon became the easternmost centers of Persian influence. In 1756, Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah sought to rein in the rising power of the British East India Company by revoking their free trade rights and demanding the dismantling of their fortification in Calcutta. A military conflict culminated in the Battle of Plassey on June 23, 1757. Robert Clive exploited rivalries within the Nawab's family, bribing Mir Jafar, the Nawab's uncle and commander-in-chief, to ensure Siraj-ud-Daulah's defeat. Clive rewarded Mir Jafar by making him Nawab in place of Siraj-ud-Daulah, but henceforth the position was a figurehead appointed and controlled by the company. Historians often describe the battle as the beginning of British colonial rule in South Asia. The company replaced Mir Jafar with his son-in-law, Mir Qasim, in 1760. Mir Qasim challenged British control by allying with Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II and the Nawab of Awadh, Shuja-ud-Daulah, but the company decisively defeated the three at the Battle of Buxar on October 23, 1764. The resulting treaty made the Mughal emperor a puppet of the British and gave the company the right to collect taxes in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, giving them de facto control of the region. The company used Bengal's tax revenue to expand their territorial possession in rest of South Asia. British Bengal. The Bengal Sultanate permitted the Portuguese settlement in Chittagong to be established in 1528. It became the first European colonial enclave in Bengal. The Bengal Sultanate lost control of Chittagong in 1531 after Arakan declared independence and the established Kingdom of Morocco. Portuguese ships from Goa and Malacca began frequenting the port city in the 16th century. The Cartaz system was introduced and required all ships in the area to purchase naval trading licenses from the Portuguese. Portuguese piracy in the sea flourished. The nearby island of Sandwip was captured in 1602. In 1615, the Portuguese navy defeated a joint fleet of the Dutch East India Company and the Araucans near the coast of Chittagong. After 1534, the Bengal Sultan allowed the Portuguese to create several settlements at Satgaon, Hooghly, Bandel, and Dhaka. In 1535, the Portuguese allied with the Bengal Sultan and held the Tiliagari Pass 280 kilometers from Patna, helping to avoid the invasion by the Mughals. By then several of the products came from Patna and the Portuguese sent in traders, establishing a factory there in 1580. The region accounted for 40% of Dutch imports from Asia. In 1666, the Mughal government of Bengal led by Viceroy Shasta Khan conquered Chittagong and expelled the Portuguese and Arakan's. The First Anglo-Mughal War took place in 1686. By the 18th century, the British, French, Dutch, Danish and Austrian East India companies built factories and trading posts across Bengal. These companies obtained consent from the Nawabs of Bengal for trading rights and concessions. The British East India Company became the most powerful among the European companies in Bengal. British East India Company rule. After the Battle of Plassey in 1757, Bengal was the first major part of the Indian subcontinent to be conquered by the British East India Company. Under the terms of the Treaty of Allahabad, the company would collect taxes on behalf of the Mughal emperor. The treaty was written by the Bengali Muslim diplomat Isamuddin. Under company rule in India, Bengal was effectively ruled by the British on behalf of the Mughal emperor under Mughal suzerainty. The East India Company formed the Bengal Presidency, through which it administered the region until 1858. A notable aspect of the company's rule was the permanent settlement, which established the feudal zamindari system. In addition, company policies led to the deindustrialization of Bengal's textile industry. The capital amassed by the East India Company in Bengal was invested in the emerging Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. Economic mismanagement, alongside drought and a smallpox epidemic, directly led to the Great Bengal Famine of 1770, which is estimated to have caused the deaths of millions of people. Several rebellions broke out during the early 19th century, as company rule had displaced the Muslim ruling class from power. A conservative Islamic cleric, Haji Shariatullah, sought to overthrow the British by propagating Islamic revivalism. Several towns in Bangladesh participated in the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Partition of Bengal. On June 3, 1947, the Mountbatten Plan outlined the partition of British India. On July 6, the Sylhet region of Assam voted in a referendum to join East Bengal. Cyril Radcliffe was tasked with drawing the borders of Pakistan and India, and the Radcliffe Line established the boundaries of present-day Bangladesh. The Radcliffe Line awarded two-thirds of Bengal as the eastern wing of Pakistan, but the medieval and early modern Bengali capitals of Gaur, Pandua, and Murshidabad fell on the Indian side close to the border with Pakistan. The Dominion of Pakistan was created on August 14, 1947. East Bengal, with Dhaka as the capital, was the most populous province of the 1947 Pakistani Federation led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who promised freedom of religion and secular democracy in the new state. Khawaja Nazimuddin was East Bengal's first chief minister, with Frederick Chalmers born its governor. The All-Pakistan Awami Muslim League was formed in 1949. In 1950, the East Bengal Legislative Assembly enacted land reform, abolishing the permanent settlement and the zamindari system. The 1952 Bengali language movement was the first sign of friction between the country's geographically separated wings. The Awami Muslim League was renamed the more secular Awami League in 1953. The first Constituent Assembly was dissolved in 1954. The United Front coalition swept aside the Muslim League in a landslide victory in the 1954 East Bengali legislative election. The following year, East Bengal was renamed East Pakistan as part of the One Unit program, and the province became a vital part of the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Pakistan adopted a new constitution in 1956. The Pakistan Army imposed military rule in 1958, and Ayub Khan was the country's strongman for 11 years. Political repression increased after the coup. Khan introduced a new constitution in 1962, replacing Pakistan's parliamentary system with a presidential and gubernatorial system based on electoral college selection known as basic democracy. In 1962, Dhaka became the seat of the National Assembly of Pakistan, a move seen as appeasing increased Bengali nationalism. The Pakistani government built the controversial Kaptai Dam, displacing the Chukma people from their indigenous homeland in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1965 blocked cross-border transport links with neighboring India in what is described as a second partition. In 1966, Awami League leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman announced a six-point movement for a federal parliamentary democracy. According to senior World Bank officials, the Pakistani government practiced extensively economic discrimination against East Pakistan. Despite generating 70% of Pakistan's export revenue with jute and tea, East Pakistan received much less government spending than West Pakistan. Economists in East Pakistan, including Rehman Sobhan and Nurul Islam among others, demanded a separate foreign exchange account for the eastern wing. The economists paraphrased Pakistan's two-nation theory ideology against India, by pointing to the existence of two different economies within Pakistan itself, dubbed the two economies theory. The central government also refused to release foreign aid allocated for East Pakistan. The populist leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was arrested for treason in the Agrudla conspiracy case and was released during the 1969 uprising in East Pakistan, which resulted in Ayub Khan's resignation. General Yahya Khan assumed power, reintroducing martial law. Ethnic and linguistic discrimination was common in Pakistan's civil and military services, in which Bengalis were underrepresented. Cultural discrimination also prevailed, making East Pakistan forge a distinct political identity. Authorities banned Bengali literature and music in state media. A cyclone devastated the coast of East Pakistan in 1970, killing an estimated 500,000 people, and the central government was criticized for its poor response. After the December 1970 elections, the Bengali nationalist Awami League won 167 of 169 East Pakistani seats in the National Assembly. The League claimed the right to form a government and develop a new constitution, but was strongly opposed by the Pakistani military and the Pakistan People's Party. War of Independence. In early 1971, negotiations began on the transfer of power. The Awami League wanted to develop a constitution based on its 6 points agenda. This was opposed by the Pakistani military, the Pakistan People's Party and the Muslim League factions. Talks eventually broke down as the junta led by Yahya Khan prepared for a military operation in East Pakistan. The Bengali population was angered when the newly elected National Assembly was not convened under pressure from the junta and West Pakistani politicians. Despite enjoying an absolute majority in the newly elected parliament, Prime Minister-elect Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was prevented from taking the oath. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto threatened to break the legs of West Pakistani MPs if they flew to Dhaka for the first session of parliament. Civil disobedience erupted across East Pakistan, with loud calls for independence. Mujib addressed a pro-independence rally of nearly 2 million people on March 7, 1971, where he said, "This time the struggle is for our liberation. This time the struggle is for our independence." The flag of Bangladesh was raised for the first time on March 23, Pakistan's Republic Day. Around midnight on March 26, 1971, military operations under the code name of Operation Searchlight began. The first targets were the student dormitories of Dhaka University, the police barracks in Dhaka's Rajarbagh locality, and Hindu neighborhoods in Old Dhaka. The Pakistan Army arrested Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and flew him to a jail in West Pakistan. The army burnt down the Ittifaq newspaper's office. Before his arrest, Mujib proclaimed the independence of Bangladesh. Pakistani forces launched a widespread campaign of killings, torture, rape, arson and destruction across East Pakistan, targeting segments of the population perceived to be pro-Awami League and pro-independence. The Hindu minority was distinctly targeted because of Pakistan's hostility with neighboring Hindu-majority India. During the Bangladesh Liberation War, the Mukti Bahinai emerged as the Bengali resistance force. A highly successful guerrilla war was fought against Pakistan. Bengalis continued to defect from Pakistan's diplomatic service, military, police, and bureaucracy. In April, they helped Awami League leaders to set up the Provisional Government of Bangladesh, which operated in exile from Calcutta with the support of the Indian government until December 1971. The Bangladesh Armed Forces was formally established in November 1971, when Bengali forces secured control of much of the countryside. The Mukti Bahinai forced the railway network to shut down to stop Pakistani troop movements. Some of the notable operations of the Mukti Bahinai included Operation Jackpot and Operation Barisal. India intervened in the war on December 3, 1971, after Pakistan's failed preemptive air strikes on India's northwestern flank. With a joint ground advance by Bangladeshi and Indian forces, coupled with air strikes by both India and the small Bangladeshi air contingent, the capital Dhaka was liberated from Pakistani occupation in mid-December. During the last phase of the war, both the Soviet Union and the United States dispatched naval forces to the Bay of Bengal in a Cold War standoff. The 9-month-long war ended with the surrender of the Pakistan Eastern Command to the Bangladesh India Allied Forces on December 16, 1971. Under international pressure, Pakistan released Mujib from imprisonment on January 8, 1972, and he was flown to a million-strong homecoming in Dhaka. Remaining Indian troops were withdrawn by March 12, 1972. By August 1972, the new state was recognized by 86 countries. Pakistan recognized Bangladesh in 1974 after pressure from most of the Muslim countries. The government of Bangladesh records the official death toll of the war at 3 million, including victims of atrocities and those who died from starvation. Minimum estimates for the number of those killed range between 300,000 and 500,000. An estimated 10 million refugees fled to neighboring India and 30 million were internally displaced. The war was one of the first to record the use of rape as a weapon of war, with an estimated 200,000 women being subjected to sexual abuse by the Pakistani army. The war saw the systematic targeting of Bengali elites, particularly intellectuals. The Jamaat-e-Islami formed paramilitary militias, which aided Pakistani troops and guided them to their intended targets. While Bengali Muslims bore the brunt of atrocities because of racial tensions with the largely Punjabi Muslim West Pakistani forces, the minority Bengali Hindu community was singled out for attacks by the Pakistani armed forces, a legacy which has led Hindu nationalist groups to claim that the war was a Hindu genocide. Archer Blood, the U.S. Consul General in East Pakistan at the time of the war, described the situation as selective genocide. In 1974 and 2002, Pakistan formally expressed regret for what happened. In 2015, Pakistan denied any atrocities took place. In 2022, a bipartisan resolution was introduced in the U.S. Congress to recognize the Bangladesh genocide of 1971. The International Association of Genocide Scholars regards the atrocities as a genocide. Modern Bangladesh. The new government of Bangladesh transformed East Pakistan's state apparatus into an independent Bangladesh state. The Awami League successfully reorganized the bureaucracy, framed a written constitution, and rehabilitated war victims. In January 1972, Mujib introduced a parliamentary republic through a presidential decree. On January 12, 1972, Mujib took oath and assumed office as Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The emerging state structure was heavily influenced by the British Westminster model. The Constitution Drafting Committee led by Kamal Hossain established a Bill of Rights influenced by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution of Bangladesh on November 4, 1972, establishing a secular, multi-party parliamentary democracy. Bangladesh joined the Commonwealth of Nations, the UN, the OIC, and the Non-Aligned Movement. In his maiden speech to the UNGA, Mujib stated that the Bengali has struggled for many centuries for the right to live a free and honorable life as independent citizens of an independent country. They expected to live in peace and harmony with all the nations in the world. He strengthened relations with India by signing a 25-year friendship treaty, a border demarcation agreement, and protocols on cross-border trade. The Land Boundary Treaty was aimed at resolving border disputes inherited from East Pakistan and swapping the Indo-Bangladesh enclaves. The Land Boundary Agreement was challenged in court, which ruled that the government needed the prior approval of Parliament to implement the Land Boundary Treaty. Mujib was a vocal supporter of Palestinian rights despite Israel being one of the first countries to recognize Bangladesh's independence. In what became Bangladesh's first dispatch of military aid overseas, Mujib sent an army medical unit to Egypt during the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. In economic policy, the first 5 years of Bangladesh was the only socialist period in its history. Mujib nationalized 580 industrial plants, as well as banks and insurance companies. In 1974, the government invited international oil companies to explore the Bay of Bengal for oil and natural gas. Petro Bangla was established as the National Oil and Gas Corporation. The Mujib government faced huge economic problems exacerbated by the resettlement of millions of people displaced in 1971, a breakdown in the food supply chain, poor health services and a lack of other necessities. The effects of the 1970 cyclone were still being felt, and the economy needed reconstruction after the war. The Bangladesh famine of 1974 damaged Mujib's popularity. Mujib presided over a regime that was built around his personality cult. Sycophants and loyalists developed an ideology called Mujibism. Parliamentary era. After the 1991 general election, the 12th Amendment to the Constitution restored the parliamentary republic, and Begum Khaleda Zia became Bangladesh's first female prime minister. Zia, a former First Lady, led a BNP government from 1990 to 1996. In 1991, her finance minister, Saifur Rahman, began a major program to liberalize the Bangladeshi economy. In addition to setting up the Chittagong Stock Exchange, banking, pharmaceuticals, aviation, ceramics, steel, telecoms, and tertiary education were opened up for investments, resulting in increased market competition. In 1992, an estimated 250,000 refugees from Burma took shelter in Bangladesh due to the suppression of the Burmese pro-democracy movement. Most of these refugees returned to Burma by 1993. In 1994, Bangladesh provided the largest non-US contingent in Operation Uphold Democracy, a military intervention in Haiti. In 1996, a year of political upheaval saw a boycotted February election, an attempted military coup, and mediation efforts producing a caretaker government to oversee elections. For 3 months, Muhammad Habibur Rahman served as the interim leader of the country. The Awami League returned to power in the June election after 21 years. One of the first initiatives of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was to repeal the deeply controversial Indemnity Ordinance, which protected her father's killers from prosecution. Hasina also signed the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord, which ended an insurgency in the southeastern hill districts. She reached an agreement with India for sharing the water of the Ganges. In 1997, Sheikh Hasina hosted South Africa's first post-apartheid President Nelson Mandela, PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat, and Turkish President Süleyman Demirel for the Silver Jubilee celebrations of Bangladesh's independence. The economic reform momentum lost steam due to political instability, including frequent hurdles and strikes by the opposition. In 2001, the BNP returned to power on the back of promises to improve the economy. The second Zia administration saw higher economic growth, but security and political problems gripped the country between 2004 and 2006. A radical Islamist militant group, the JMB, carried out a series of terror attacks. At the end of the BNP's term in 2006, there was widespread political unrest. The Bangladeshi military urged President Ayazuddin Ahmed to impose a state of emergency, and a caretaker government, led by Fakhruddin Ahmed, was installed from January 2007 to December 2008 to implement reforms to the electoral system, judiciary, and bureaucracy. The JMB leaders were arrested and later executed in March 2007. After achieving a landslide victory in the 2008 Bangladesh general election, the Awami League government returned to power, taking their oath on January 6, 2009, with Sheikh Hasina once again becoming the prime minister and bringing political stability and economic growth to the nation. In 2010, the Supreme Court reduced the scope for military interventions through legal loopholes and reaffirmed secular principles in the constitution. The Awami League set up a war crimes tribunal to prosecute surviving Bengali Islamist collaborators of the 1971 atrocities. Human rights abuses increased under Hasina and her administration, particularly enforced disappearances by the Rapid Action Battalion, with the government being accused as increasingly authoritarian since returning to power in 2009. The 2014 elections and 2024 elections were boycotted by the BNP-Jamaat alliance. The BNP and Jamaat have often engaged in violent protests to overthrow the government. In 2017, Bangladesh experienced the largest influx of Arakan's refugees in its history. An estimated 700,000 Rohingya refugees took shelter in Cox's Bazar after a campaign of ethnic cleansing in Rakhine State, Myanmar. The national poverty rate went down from 80% in 1971 to 44.2% in 1991 to 12.9% in 2021. Bangladeshi economist Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank, which Yunus founded, were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for pioneering microfinance and their efforts to eradicate poverty. Bangladesh has emerged as the second largest economy in South Asia, surpassing the per capita income levels of both India and Pakistan. Since 2009, Bangladesh has launched a series of infrastructure megaprojects. On June 25, 2022, the Padma Bridge opened and connected southwestern Bangladesh with the rest of the country, while the Dhaka Metro was opened in 2023. As part of the green transition, Bangladesh's industrial sector emerged as a leader in building green factories, with the country having the largest number of certified green factories in the world in 2023. In January 2024, Awami League led by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina secured a fourth straight term in Bangladesh's general election. The Jatiya Party was the main opposition party. In March 2024, the government vowed to keep the country's pace of rapid development ongoing. Government and politics. Bangladesh is a de jure representative democracy under its constitution, with a Westminster-style parliamentary republic that has universal suffrage. The head of government is the Prime Minister, who forms a government every 5 years. The President invites the leader of the largest party in parliament to become Prime Minister. The government of Bangladesh is overseen by a cabinet headed by the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The tenure of a parliamentary government is 5 years. The Bangladesh Civil Service assists the cabinet in running the government. Recruitment for the civil service is based on a public examination. In theory, the civil service should be a meritocracy. But a disputed quota system coupled with politicization and preference for seniority have allegedly affected the civil service's meritocracy. The President of Bangladesh is the ceremonial head of state whose powers include signing bills passed by Parliament into law. The President is the Supreme Commander of the Bangladesh Armed Forces and the Chancellor of all universities. The Supreme Court of Bangladesh is the highest court of the land, followed by the High Court and Appellate Divisions. The head of the judiciary is the Chief Justice of Bangladesh, who sits on the Supreme Court. The courts have wide latitude in judicial review, and judicial precedent is supported by Article 111 of the Constitution. The judiciary includes district and metropolitan courts divided into civil and criminal courts. Due to a shortage of judges, the judiciary has a large backlog. The Jatiya Sangshad as national parliament is the unicameral parliament. It has 350 members of parliament, including 300 MPs elected on the first-past-the-post system and 50 MPs appointed to reserved seats for women's empowerment. Article 70 of the Constitution of Bangladesh forbids MPs from voting against their party. However, several laws proposed independently by MPs have been transformed into legislation, including the anti-torture law. The parliament is presided over by the Speaker of the Jatiya Sangsad, who is second in line to the President as per the Constitution. Administrative divisions. Bangladesh is divided into 8 administrative divisions, each named after their respective divisional headquarters: Barisal, Chittagong, Dhaka, Khulna, Mymensingh, Rajshahi, Rangpa, and Sylhet. Divisions are subdivided into districts. There are 64 districts in Bangladesh, each further subdivided into Upjalak or Thana. The area within each police station, except for those in metropolitan areas, is divided into several unions, with each union consisting of multiple villages. In the metropolitan areas, police stations are divided into wards, further divided into mahallas. There are no elected officials at the divisional or district levels, and the administration is composed only of government officials. Direct elections are held in each union for a chairperson and several members. In 1997, a parliamentary act was passed to reserve 3 seats out of 12 in every union for female candidates. Foreign relations. Bangladesh is considered a middle power in global politics. It plays an important role in the geopolitical affairs of the Indo-Pacific, due to its strategic location between South and Southeast Asia. Bangladesh joined the Commonwealth of Nations in 1972 and the United Nations in 1974. It relies on multilateral diplomacy on issues like climate change, nuclear non-proliferation, trade policy and non-traditional security issues. Bangladesh pioneered the creation of SAARC, which has been the preeminent forum for regional diplomacy among the countries of the Indian subcontinent. It joined the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in 1974, and is a founding member of the developing 8 countries. In recent years, Bangladesh has focused on promoting regional trade and transport links with support from the World Bank. Dhaka hosts the headquarters of BIMSTEC, an organization that brings together countries dependent on the Bay of Bengal. Relations with neighboring Myanmar have been severely strained since 2016 to 2017, after over 700,000 Rohingya refugees illegally entered Bangladesh. The parliament, government, and civil society of Bangladesh have been at the forefront of international criticism against Myanmar for military operations against the Rohingya, and have demanded their right of return to Arakan. Bangladesh shares an important bilateral and economic relationship with its largest neighbor India, which is often strained by water politics of the Ganges and the eith, and the border killings of Bangladeshi civilians. Post-independent Bangladesh has continued to have a problematic relationship with Pakistan, mainly due to its denial of the 1971 Bangladesh genocide. It maintains a warm relationship with China, which is its largest trading partner, and the largest arms supplier. Japan is Bangladesh's largest economic aid provider, and the two maintain a strategic and economic partnership. Political relations with Middle Eastern countries are robust. Bangladesh receives 59% of its remittances from the Middle East, despite poor working conditions affecting over 4 million Bangladeshi workers. Bangladesh plays a major role in global climate diplomacy as a leader of the Climate Vulnerable Forum. Economy. Bangladesh is the second largest economy in South Asia after India. The country has outpaced India and Pakistan in terms of per capita income. According to the World Bank, when the newly independent country of Bangladesh was born on December 16, 1971, it was the second poorest country in the world, making the country's transformation over the next 50 years one of the great development stories. Since then, poverty has been cut in half at record speed. Enrollment in primary school is now nearly universal. Hundreds of thousands of women have entered the workforce. Steady progress has been made on maternal and child health. And the country is better buttressed against the destructive forces posed by climate change and natural disasters. Bangladesh's success comprises many moving parts, from investing in human capital to establishing macroeconomic stability. Building on this success, the country is now setting the stage for further economic growth and job creation by ramping up investments in energy, inland connectivity, urban projects, and transport infrastructure, as well as focusing on climate change adaptation and disaster preparedness on its path towards sustainable growth. Bangladesh has made one of the greatest leaps on the Human Development Index among Asian countries. According to UNDP, Asia and the Pacific has observed the fastest Human Development Index progress in the world, with Bangladesh being one of the best performers, moving from an HDI of 0.397 in 1990, the fourth lowest in the region, to a HDI of 0.661 in 2021. Only China had greater improvements in the region over this period. In 2022, Bangladesh had the second largest foreign exchange reserves in South Asia. The reserves have boosted the government's spending capacity despite tax revenues forming only 7.7% of government revenue. A big chunk of investments have gone into the power sector. In 2009, Bangladesh was experiencing daily blackouts several times a day. In 2022, the country achieved 100% electrification. One of the major anti-poverty schemes of the Bangladeshi government is the Ashrayan project, which aims to eradicate homelessness by providing free housing. The poverty rate has gone down from 80% in 1971, to 44.2% in 1991, to 12.9% in 2021. The literacy rate was 74.66% in 2022. Bangladesh has a labor force of roughly 70 million, which is the world's seventh largest, with an unemployment rate of 5.2% as of 2021. The government is setting up 100 special economic zones to attract foreign direct investment and generate 10 million jobs. The Bangladesh Investment Development Authority and the Bangladesh Economic Zones Authority have been established to help investors in setting up factories, and to complement the long-standing Bangladesh Export Processing Zone Authority. The Bangladeshi taka is the national currency. The service sector accounts for about 51% of total GDP and employs 39% of the workforce. The industrial sector accounts for 35% of GDP and employs 20% of the workforce. The agriculture sector makes up 13% of the economy but is the biggest employment sector, with 40% of the workforce. In agriculture, the country is a major producer of rice, fish, tea, fruits, vegetables, flowers, and jute. Lobsters and shrimps are some of Bangladesh's well-known exports. Language. The official and predominant language of Bangladesh is Bengali, which is spoken by more than 99% of the population as their native language. Bengali is described as a dialect continuum where there are various dialects spoken throughout the country. There is a diglossia in which much of the population can understand or speak standard colloquial Bengali, and their regional dialects. These include Chattertonian or Sylheti, though some linguists consider them as separate languages. English plays an important role in Bangladesh's judicial and educational affairs, due to the country's history as part of the British Empire. It is widely spoken and commonly understood, and is taught as a compulsory subject in all schools, colleges, and universities, while the English medium educational system is widely attended. Tribal languages, although increasingly endangered, include the Chukma language, another native Eastern Indo-Aryan language, spoken by the Chukma people. Others are Garo, Metat, Kokborok, and Rakhine. Among the Austro-Asiatic languages, the most spoken is the Santali language, native to the Santal people. The stranded Pakistanis and some sections of the old Daccaites often use Urdu as their native tongue. Still, the usage of the latter remains highly reproached. Religion. Bangladesh was constitutionally proclaimed as the first secular state of South Asia in 1972. It grants freedom of religion, ensures separation of church and state, and claims to be secular in practice while establishing Islam as the state religion. The constitution bans religion-based politics and discrimination, and proclaims equal recognition of people adhering to all faiths. Islam is the largest religion across the country, being followed by about 91% of the population. The vast majority of Bangladesh's citizens are Bengali Muslims, adhering to Sunni Islam. The country is the third most populous Muslim majority state in the world and has the fourth largest overall Muslim population. Hinduism is followed by 8% of the population, mainly by the Bengali Hindus, who form the country's second largest religious group and the third largest Hindu community globally, after those in India and Nepal. Buddhism is the third largest religion, at 0.6% of the population. Bangladeshi Buddhists are concentrated among the tribal ethnic groups in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. At the same time, coastal Chittagong is home to many Bengali Buddhists. Christianity is the fourth largest religion at 0.3%, followed mainly by a small Bengali Christian minority.